Hey guys, this is Jennifer, and this is the Jennifer Allwood Show, the podcast where you learn how to create a beautiful home and build a creative business. Grab a cup of coffee, find a cozy spot in the house, and let's chat. I'm excited you're here. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm super excited to have you here with me again this week, and I'm so excited about my guest this week. This is the second time she has been on my podcast. Most of you will probably recognize her name. She's my best business buddy, Carrie Robaina. And Carrie and I have known each other for many years. We actually met in a mastermind, didn't we, my friend?
Yes, we did.
And so we were being coached together, and just it was one of those things, like every once in a while, you just meet somebody and you're like, and I already love her, and now we're friends forever. And that was kind of the situation. And we just bonded in Chicago and became business buddies. And even though we're in completely different areas, you're in health and wellness, and you do a lot of evangelism work, and I'm, in business and DIY. We still find so much that we have in common with our businesses, and you've just been such a blessing to me, Carrie. I cannot even count how many times I have called you and said, girl, help, I need help. Like, you're my tech go-to for every single thing. And I'm just glad to have you here, and just want everyone to know that I love you both as a businesswoman and just a sister in Christ, and just an all around, you're just a good person, girl. You're good people. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. That is so kind of you. I'm kind of blushing a little bit about that, but no, I'm grateful for your friendship, Jennifer. You have taught me, you are brilliant, honestly, at what you do. You truly are. You are remarkable.
You're sweet, honey. Thank you. But I want to talk about a new thing that you are doing, because this is so near and dear to my heart. So you are teaching people how to start a podcast.
Yes, and I am so excited. Like, I can hardly contain it, Jennifer.
Yeah, I know. And so you have a podcast. Tell the people where they can find your podcast.
My podcast is She Walks in Truth, and you can find it on iTunes and wherever, like if you're listening to Jennifer's podcast, wherever you find the Jennifer Allwood Show, you'll be able to find She Walks in Truth, and on my website at shewalksintruth.com.
Okay, so here's what's funny about that statement. And I know you don't think that you're going to be like, what? But I don't even know how to find my own podcast, Carrie. Like, that's the truth. Because I'm so non-techie. And you know this about me, that because I record my podcast every week, and then I send it to my podcast guy, and he does all the things, and then it magically appears on iTunes, and I don't even know where else. I think it's on like Stitcher and iHeartRadio, which I don't even know what those things are. I know you do. But literally, between you and where I send my podcast every week, you guys have just taken care of kind of all of that for me, because you're experts in podcasting.
Yes, but you know what's so beautiful, Jennifer, is you just went for it. And that's what I want anyone who's listening today to know, that you don't have to, have all the tech experience to start a podcast. It is so simple. All people really need to get started is a computer, a microphone, and Wi-Fi, and bam, you're ready to start.
So let's expand on that for 2 seconds, Carrie. And most of my audience knows that we've recently just moved into a new home. And shout out to JC, that's short for Jesus Christ, for the new house.
It's gorgeous too, by the way.
Thank you so much. But so our house is completely under construction, and we have contractors in here as we speak, sanding walls. So literally, I am in my son's closet right now, sitting on the floor with an iPad Pro. And what did I put in my ears? What did you tell me to put in my ears? These are my iPods, right?
Your AirPods.
And that is what I'm podcasting with right now. And just an app on my little iPad Pro devicey. And so it's not as techy as it used to be, is it?
It's not. It's really not. And Jennifer, if you could see my setup right now, I was in California recently and had something come up that I had to do today. And I didn't really have a lot of time to set up. So my microphone is literally propped up on a roll of toilet paper.
Okay, so then I'll go ahead and I'll take it one step closer to the full truth. My son's Birkenstocks are propping my iPad Pro up so I can see your face right now. Isn't that funny? So
that is
I hope just by being like completely transparent that there's some girl at home who's going, okay, if they can use toilet paper and Birkenstocks, I can probably figure out how to do a podcast.
Like seriously, yes, and amen.
So I love that you've come out with a course where you are going to teach people how to podcast. And I know in my coaching groups, Carrie, I've been talking to people about the value of podcasting. So just from a business perspective, I'd like to kind of share what I think that podcasting has done for me as a business person. So number one, I think I had on like 57, 58 episodes, something like that. And so I've done over a year because I'm doing one every week. And I really think that podcasting has made me a better speaker, like in real life, because it forces you to become a decent communicator. And that also, I think, has translated over to my writing in terms of my blog and in terms of just even crafting social media posts. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Because I'm constantly having to practice speaking and writing, and it's all kind of related. So I think that that's one thing that it's done for me in my business. It's made me a better speaker. Two, it's made me more confident about my speaking, because as with anything, when you do it 56, 57 times in a row, you just develop, you kind of get your groove, and Stella got her groove back here, and you kind of get, the rhythm, and with that comes confidence. So that's awesome. But then I love too that it's introduced me to an entirely new audience that I don't think, my Instagram posts and my Pinterest posts are reaching. And so tell me about the audience for podcasts. And I know that you've done a ton of research on this, girl.
Yes, I have. Well, we'll just get to the demographics of it, because I think that that's relative to people who listen to your show and business owners. One thing that I want people to understand is that people who listen to podcasts are different than the people that are going to listen to you're going to see on social media. And so the first thing to remember is that people who listen to podcasts are affluent.
Yes.
Like it's 16% of them have an annual household income of $150,000 or more. Mm-hmm. And that is quite a bit more, than the general US population. And why is that important as a business owner? It's because if people have money to spend, then you want them listening to your show if you have a product, because
yes.
Like seriously, because they can most likely spend the money on what you're offering, because it's obviously a heart posture of serving people, but as business owners, we're here to make money as well. So that's definitely important. Podcast listeners are educated. 30% have a grad school degree, and 27% almost 30% have a 4-year college degree. So they are definitely educated. 63% work full-time. And then I think this is so interesting how many hours a week people listen to podcasts. 5 hours and 7 minutes. The average listener listens. And I would say I listen probably more than 5 hours worth of podcasts a week. Wouldn't you?
So if I'm catching what you're throwing here, you're basically saying that the people listening to our podcast right now, they are smarter and wealthier than a lot of if we're looking at just the statistics.
Yes.
A lot of the population. And so that's awesome. And I know for me, Carrie, like I have stopped, I never watched a ton of TV anyway, but I would so much rather like turn off the music when I'm driving in the car somewhere and listen to a podcast. And what I like about it too is that it's a small chunk, so it doesn't require as much dedication for me as say like an Audible book, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? I can listen to a 15-minute podcast. I can listen to an hour-long podcast, but I'm just like you, girl. I love listening to podcasts, and I spend a lot of time doing it.
Yes. And today, just for example, today I spent 7 hours in the car and I listened to podcasts the whole time, and just a variety of entertainment. And it's interesting that you say that, Jennifer, because the statistics, and this is by Edison Research, they are the ones who gauge radio ratings and podcasting and anything audio related. Uh-huh. But their research shows that people now are listening to podcasts for information. We've kind of gone away from using our devices for entertainment. That will probably always be a small part of it. But the reason that they say that they think, the experts, I guess, think that that's how people are consuming it or why is because it saves us time. And like you were saying, like a book on Audible, that might take you 6, 7, 8 hours worth of time to listen to. Well, there are podcasts about people. You could do a podcast on like reviewing a book, there are podcasts like that. So it's like the Cliff Notes version of a book. You know what I mean? It's so interesting to me that people are craving information. And with the video piece of it, without the video piece, I should say, people aren't, you can listen to a podcast in the gym or in the airplane, or I listen in my home. I put it on Alexa, some of the podcasts, and I don't feel like I have to sit down. Yeah. Did I just give you an idea? Yes.
That's the tip. So how do you do that? Do you say like, Alexa, turn on?
What I do is I pair my phone. So I pair my device and I turn on my Bluetooth and I turn on the Bluetooth on my phone. I play the podcast from my phone and bam, it comes out the speakers of Alexa.
Okay. So I'm totally going to text you about this tomorrow.
I will totally hook you up, girl.
Go ahead and give everybody your cell phone number so they can all text you.
I kind of would do that. No, I'm kidding. Boundaries.
But so you touched us a little bit, Carrie, on some of the I heard you just mention a topic because there's podcasts for everything anymore. And I was telling the people in my coaching group, because I have, mostly creatives, DIY people, makers, bakers, jewelry makers, that sort of thing. I always like how that kind of rhymes, makers,
yes.
Jewelry makers. But there are podcasts literally for every single topic anymore. And some of the things that I hear from people are, well, I couldn't start a podcast in my industry. And I'm like, the heck you couldn't. There are podcasts like about wrongful convictions, like people that have been put into prison, when they shouldn't have been. There are podcasts on missing people. There's podcasts on politics, mystery books, fishing, landscaping, gardening. There are DIY podcasts, but not a ton. So it's like a wide open space for people.
It is. There are not a ton of people in the podcasting realm, and compared to blogging and things like that. And it makes me sad. But I think that people do get caught up on the technology piece of it. And you can do it. Anyone who's listening and there's a topic. Now there are ways that you can hone in on what kind of topic you want to talk about, because podcasting, you really want to go narrow and you really want to hone in on your audience. And it's a little bit different than blogging, but once you kind of figure it out, you can hone in on your message and bam, I mean, seriously. And if someone's scared of the technology piece, then you can outsource it, and you'd be surprised how inexpensively you can outsource someone to edit your audio.
Amen. And that's exactly what I do. And I'm sure that that's something you're teaching in your class, Carrie.
Yes.
I will have you mention where they can find your course when we're at the end of the podcast here, and I'll put it in the show notes as well for people. But a couple things that I want to tag on to that. I have noticed that since starting a podcast, my business has been taken a little more seriously. And just because it's almost like podcasting is the new book. You know what I mean?
No, I totally agree. It builds credibility it builds trust. You've got to really, you have to be consistent when you do it, which you are. But yes, I totally agree with you. It completely builds that credibility factor. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So who is, if they're listening to this right now, who's like, okay, I do want to be taken more seriously, and I do want to have people, with a higher income level that would listen to me. And so who else would be a great candidate to start like a podcast? Like, is it somebody that is pretty comfortable just speaking, or somebody that maybe is really niched down, or is there anybody you can think of that a podcast is not for? Maybe that's a better question.
I really can't think of somebody that it's not for. I will say that podcasting is something that I guess, here we go. I guess I could say who it's not for. It's not going to be for people who aren't willing to be in it for the long haul. I'm sorry. It's like they call it pod fading, and I don't want to put too many cheesy terms in here.
Oh, I love
but it's just like pod fading as you get started. And then all of a sudden you just like, it kind of just, like it stops. It fizzles out. And so someone who's not willing to be in it for the long haul, then podcasting is not going to be for you, because it does take a little while to build your audience. But man, once you do that, and if you're already starting with an audience, then your podcast is going to be that much more successful up front. And if you're just not willing to learn, I guess, it's just once you figure out how to do it, then you'll be like, oh, what was I so afraid of? Because some of the steps you only have to do one time, like connecting your show to iTunes. You only have to do it one time. So it's not a big scary thing, but you have to be willing to learn. But as far as topics go and people who might listen to your podcast, you just got to be creative. You have so many creatives and you have a gift to share with the world. And some people there are some entertainment type of podcasts as well. And like musicians would make great podcast hosts because they're the ins and outs. Anyone who has something to teach somebody too, would be a great candidate for a podcast.
Well, I know that a couple of people in my coaching group in the inner circle were saying, but I feel like people need to see, like they're makers. So I feel like people need to see me make. And I'm like, but you know what you could do? Instead, you could start a podcast about your industry. So let's just say you're a wreath maker, for example, because I have a lot of wreath makers in my inner circle. So you could do podcasting you could talk about on one whole episode, where to buy things wholesale. A second on how to price things. You could do a podcast on where to sell things. You could do a podcast on it's spring's coming. What should be the top 5 wreaths you're doing? You could bring in guests to do a podcast. We've been doing a lot of panels on my own podcast where I'm bringing in other experts and interviewing them. So there's so many things that I think one of the hangups I've noticed is that people think that they can't do a podcast because it's only audio and they feel like what they do is visual. But I actually feel, and I think you're going to agree with me, like since that's the mentality of so many people, that's why they're not starting podcasts in those industries. So be the forerunner, babe. Like,
yes.
Like, okay, I know they can't see what I'm about to make, but I'm about to tell them, all the back end things. And I listen to like Young House Love, for example, and that they are a blog. They do DIY, they do home renovation. So they have tons of podcasts about color, even though you can't see the color. They're just talking about the demo they're doing in their house, about how they decided on which kitchen faucets to select. So I think that's one hang up. I think one hang up is, how do I do this how would I do a podcast if people can't see me? And number 2, how do I do the tech piece? Like those, I think, are the 2 main hangups. But I think that you and I have both decided, for everyone listening, that those are able to be just blown right over. And podcasts, I think, are for anyone.
Yes, absolutely. And so thinking of the wreath making example, so maybe somebody who makes wreaths, maybe the visual piece is on the Facebook Live to get the traffic on the Facebook Live, but then the podcast, as you're saying, it might be more directed to wreath makers, like you're saying, from the business perspective. Yeah. But, because I'll watch some DIY videos, even though I'm not a wreath maker, I just love to see people create. So the podcast could be geared toward people who actually are, making the wreaths. And I totally agree with you. And when you think about it too, those people who are listening, so their avatar or their ideal client, they are like, I just know when I create something, I like to listen to audio, but I can't watch video. So a podcast would be a perfect way to teach people who are creatives, because as they're creating, they can listen to you. Do you see what I'm saying?
That is perfect. So tell me the name of your course. Tell me the name of your podcast course.
It is so fun. And you and I had a brainstorm session. You and I are very similar. We both, in some ways, with how we kind of brainstorm. And so I'm so grateful for you, because I was just like, girl, I've been trying for a while now to figure out how to name this course. And so you're like, well, do you have a few minutes to hop on the phone? And so we had this brainstorm session, and it's called Rock Your Podcast. And so excited. Rock your podcast.
I am excited too. And when is your course launching, Carrie? And where can people find that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am going to be launching on March 8th on International Women's Day. And so I don't have anything against guys, but my course is mostly geared toward women because that's who I'm typically in contact with. And that's usually who I hear from who are afraid of the technology piece. Now, guys are more than welcome to be in on my course, but the logo's pink and orange and things like that. So if you're a guy, don't be afraid of that. But I'm super excited to launch it. I'm doing a beta launch this first time. So I'm only taking a limited number of students. And I tell you, I've been working so hard on this course. So it's literally first come, first serve. And here's why it's so I'm so excited to launch in the beta. And thank you for your wisdom and your knowledge. You helped me figure that piece of it out as well. It's because I get to work one-on-one with people. And I've been in digital media and broadcasting for 20 years. And so I think I know.
Yeah, it's not just like you're some chick that just kind of figured out how to podcast. This is actually your background. And here's what's really wild about Carrie and I. Carrie does not live in Kansas City. She lives in Minnesota. By the way, there's this rap song, Carrie, called Cold Like Minnesota. I'm sure you don't know what it is.
I don't, but I got to totally look it up now.
Okay, well, you're going to want to make sure the lyrics are clean. And so every time I talk about you being from Minnesota, that song pops in my head.
That's hilarious.
Side note. But you used to live in Kansas City, where I'm at, and you used to work here on radio and television. So your entire background is this sort of techie, podcasty, radio technology thing.
It is. And I even taught high school radio and television in South Texas. I ran a radio and TV department for high school students. So it's totally my jam. Totally. I love it so much.
I'm so glad I have smart friends.
You're brilliant too, girl.
I want to tell people about you, Carrie, and is that when I was setting up my podcast a little over a year ago, it was a year in February, I was on the phone with you constantly. How do I do this? How do I put the first couple on iTunes? How many do I need to do in advance? How do I record it? Which microphone do I use? Which app do I record it on? How far does the microphone need to be from my mouth? I had all of the questions. And so I was your beta for your beta.
You were.
And so those are all the types of things that I'm assuming you're going to be putting in your course, as well as how to get your podcast into the ears of people. Am I right?
Yes, totally. Absolutely. And we're going to really figure out how to turn your passion into a purposeful podcast. Really, that's the first piece of it. I help you figure out if someone's thinking that they want to podcast, but they're not sure what they want to podcast about. I totally help them in that first week figure out, okay, what's your message? We're going into what's your mission statement and what's your vision statement. What is your goal? Because we have to have that in mind with anything, but especially in podcasting, because it has to be so narrowed down. And so we learn all the stuff, all the things, girl. And I teach it all. And in a very simple way, there's only 4 modules. And so people can literally go through my course and they can go from 0 to podcast in 30 days.
That is so good. That is key. 0 to podcast in 30 days. I love it.
Yeah, because I've made it so simple, and that I think that's from my teaching background as well, is to break it down into really small chunks. The modules and the little videos are only 8 minutes, and people can work through the course at their own time. It's literally step by step, because a lot of people try to piece a podcast together from different resources, and there are a lot of people that will tell you to buy a $300 microphone. I tell you the $34 microphone to get this
Amen.
Makes it sound great. It's you don't have to invest a lot of money. And so that's what I'm really excited about, is to get this course into people's hands and get them on the airwaves and serving their tribe, building their community, and helping them make money.
I love that. Well, and here's the thing too, and let me tag on to that in a couple of different ways. In terms of the making money, I think one of the things maybe that people don't realize is that when you get to a certain level on your podcast with the amount of listeners and things, you're able to start getting people to sponsor your podcast, and then you're getting paid to record podcasts, which is amazing. Podcasting is a huge piece of a lot of marketers' business. I mean, this is a big chunk of revenue for a lot of people. And so I think that sometimes people don't understand that piece of it. But I love that you're doing it from zero to podcast in 30 days, because here's what I know, working with thousands of creative people every month. Most creatives, they will be super passionate about something. They will get started, and then they're going to hit a roadblock. And the roadblock's going to be, now, how do I get this on iTunes? Now, how do I upload it? Now, and there's going to be something. And that sets people back weeks, sometimes months. And then you kind of dig that thing back up and you're like, okay, this is the quarter. I'm going to put this podcast into place again. And I'm going to go for it this time. And then they try to pick back up where they left off. And, maybe things have changed in the industry and they get another piece of the puzzle, and then, life happens or they're frustrated and then things sit on the shelf again. And so I would just like to encourage some of the people who have been listening to me for months and months and months, if a podcast has even remotely crossed your mind, to really lean into that and consider taking a class like Carrie's, where basically what you're offering, Carrie, is a shortcut. That's what
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Because it's the same thing I do in my coaching program. People could figure out how to do a lot of what I teach or you teach if they wanted to go to YouTube and piece together 40 different videos for free. But who's got that kind of time?
Right.
I mean, or the emotional capacity to do that. And so thank you for laying this out. I already know several people in my group who are wanting to sign up for it as soon as you launch, because I know you well enough to know it's going to be laid out very simple for people like me who aren't techie, who want to cuss when they turn on their computer. It doesn't come on. And so I'm just super excited for you. I'm excited that that you're offering this. I actually don't even know of any other podcasting classes out there. You know what I mean?
There aren't a ton of them, and I don't know of any other women teaching it, podcasting really as well, and in a simplified way. Or if people teach it, it's like gobzillions of dollars to be able to do it. And so, I am so excited about it, Jennifer. And then going back to the piece of being able to make money from podcasting, it's also a great way to build your list, because one of the things I teach in the intro and the outro of your podcast is you want to direct traffic to your blog and to your other resources. So it's a great way to continue to build your email list and make community and connection with people in that way. And you can even sponsor your own podcast, Jennifer. I've heard people do that. If they I don't really have a lot of other products, but you could, do a little break or a segment and sponsor your own podcast and drive traffic, of a course maybe that you're coming up with. Like Jennifer, you could be doing that on your podcast as well. If you're launching something in a particular quarter, why not take 30 seconds and put some fun music to it and give it a shout out. Yeah.
It's awesome. So Carrie, where can people find your class at? How can they go get some more information and get signed up?
Okay, so they can go to rockyourpodcast.com. That's when the course opens. If someone's listening before March 8th, then they would just go to carrierobaina.com, and I have a tab that says learn how to podcast, and they can get on the wait list. So somebody could go get on the wait list right now, and you'll be the first to know when the doors open for the course. And the doors are only going to be open this time for the amount of people that I'm going to be accepting as students, or a certain amount of days. So,
which is awesome.
We'll see what happens. Yeah.
And I'll go ahead and link to both of those in the show notes in case somebody is landing on my blog and listening to this there. So, girl, thank you. You are just one smart cookie, and I appreciate people like you. Since I am so not techie, I'm so grateful for people like you who break it down for people like me.
You are so welcome, Jennifer. And just look, you're an example. You're someone who went for it. And that's what I want people to know is just go for it. And you're not going to like how you sound the first 20 times, but that's okay. We learn as we grow.
Like a teenage boy. Yeah, I never listen to my podcast back. But, it's funny, Carrie, because I've refused to quit and just kept going at it every week. And the truth is I actually love it. And once you kind of develop a process, you get, kind of into your comfort level and a rhythm going. It doesn't take a lot of effort for me every week to do a podcast. I would say I probably spend 30 minutes to an hour every week working on my podcast. But the cool thing is, last week I just did a little bit of an extra push of advertising my podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and not using ads, but just talking about it. And my podcast went as high as the number 42 on the list of all business podcasts. It was crazy.
That's amazing.
And that's in just a year. And so, so for the person listening who is like, okay, like I need this to be, successful overnight. Well, like you said, you got to be in it for the long haul. But we are really starting to see some momentum, and I can see how this has just added a whole nother segment to our business that really would have been missing otherwise. And so I'm so excited for you that you are adding this to other people's businesses as well.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm pumped. There's so much more that I can't wait to teach. Like I could talk for hours, but thank you so much.
Well, Carrie, thank you for being here. And for those of you people who are listening, make sure you go check her out at rockyourpodcast.com or carrierobaina.com, and you can get on her wait list. And again, if this is something that you've been thinking about, I encourage you to get off the fence because thinking about things is not the thing that's ever going to change your business. The thing that will always change your business is the implementation, is actually to start doing something. And the only way that you're going to know if a podcast could be for you, or if you enjoy it, or if it's something you want to, go at for the long haul, is to actually start and to try. And so I just encourage you to get out of your comfort zone, especially if there's nobody else in your industry who is currently podcasting. That just leaves you wide open for success. So thank you guys for being here today. We appreciate you being here week after week. If you have a chance, Carrie and I would love it if you could slip over to iTunes and leave a review. And I think the reviews are actually what pushed us into the number 42 spot last week, because we just had a ton of people do that for us overnight. And so those reviews count, and I appreciate you more than you know. And if you want to screenshot me a little copy of your review, I will send you a little message through Instagram Messenger. So bless you as you go about your week, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.